Hello, and welcome along to the deep dive. You're watching Westferry Times. Today, we're really getting stuck into the recent tax proposals from Reform UK. Our aim really is to go past the headlines, unpack the actual ideas, and try to figure out what impact they might have on you.
Yes, there's certainly significant proposals. And
Hmm.
like you say, we need to look at the details to really understand the potential effects, the ripple effects across the economy.
Absolutely. And helping us do just that today is James Thompson. He's a senior economic analyst at the Institute for Fiscal Studies, the IFS. James, thanks so much for being here, lending us your expertise.
Thanks for having me on.
Okay, James, let's jump right in. Reform UK's tax changes. What are we actually talking about here? What are the main things they've put forward?
Right. Well, the plan really focuses on four main tax adjustments. First, a big increase in the personal income tax threshold, lifting it from, what is it, £12,570 now,
Yeah.
up to £20,000.
Okay, 20,000 pounds.
Second, they were proposing to abolish inheritance tax,
Completely.
get rid of it entirely. Exactly. Third, there's a plan to cut corporation tax, phased in over 3 years, bringing it down from 25% to 15%.
16%, right?
And finally, stamp duty. They want to eliminate it for properties under £750,000.
Wow. Okay, those are some really major changes across the board there. Income tax, inheritance, corporation tax, stamp duty. When you add all that up, what sort of cost are we looking at? What's the hit to the public finances?
Well, the IFS estimates,
Yeah,
the total cost could be around $90 billion every year,
90 billion.
annually, yes. And just to give a sense of the scale, that income tax threshold increase on its own, that's projected to cost somewhere between, say, 50 billion and 80 billion per year.
50 to 80 billion, just for the income tax part.
That gives you an idea of the magnitude, yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. 90 billion taels a year. That's, it's a figure that makes you sit up and take notice. So the obvious question follows, how do they plan to pay for it, for this huge bill?
Right. So their strategy relies entirely on making very big cuts to government spending. Reform UK claims they can find savings of about 150 billion annually through various cuts.
150 billion pounds worth of savings. Where are they planning to find that kind of money?
Yeah.
Which specific areas are targeted?
They've pointed to several key areas, things like scaling back the UK's net zero initiatives, also reducing spending on asylum support, cutting funds for diversity programs, and then there's a sort of broader commitment to cut what they call wasteful spending across government departments.
150 billion in savings, though. That sounds incredibly ambitious. When economists look at that figure, do they think it's, achievable? Is it realistic?
There's a lot of skepticism,
Yeah.
frankly, from many economic experts about whether savings on that scale are actually feasible.
Right.
The general feeling is that finding and making cuts that large without having a really significant impact on public services, well, it would be extremely challenging, to say the least.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Can you give us an example, something specific where maybe the claimed saving is being questioned?
Sure. A good example is the net zero policies. They claim scrapping them would save 45 billion a year.
Okay. 45 billion.
But the issue there is that quite a lot of the investment in net zero projects, things like wind farms or insulation, it actually comes from the private sector.
Ah, not just government money.
Exactly. Private companies invest, often encouraged by government policy. So just stopping the government policies doesn't automatically mean the government saves 45 billion. It might even, put off that private investment and maybe lead to other costs down the line.
That definitely adds a layer of complexity. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Who actually benefits most from these tax cuts? If they happened, who would see the biggest difference in their bank balance?
Well, the analysis suggests that the main beneficiaries would tend to be households with higher incomes.
Higher earners. Why is that?
It comes down to a few things. Firstly, that income tax threshold increase. Yes, everyone earning above £20,000 benefits, but the actual cash saving, the pounds in your pocket, is bigger the more you earn above that threshold.
Right, makes sense.
Then abolishing inheritance tax, that's a direct benefit mainly for wealthier people, those with significant assets to pass on.
Okay.
And thirdly, cutting corporation tax. That mainly benefits businesses, which often means shareholders and owners, who tend to be higher up the income scale too.
So it sounds like there might be a bit of a disconnect. Reform UK often talks about representing people left behind, but these policies seem to offer the biggest direct financial gains to those who are already better off.
That's certainly an observation that's been made, yes. The way these specific cuts are structured, they do seem weighted towards providing larger financial benefits at the top end of the income and wealth scale.
Okay, let's widen the lens again. How have these proposals gone down generally with other economists, political figures? What's the overall reaction?
The reaction from many economists, including us at the IFS, has been pretty critical overall. There are major concerns about the credibility of the plans, especially the scale of the spending cuts needed to make the numbers add up.
Right, the funding gap.
Exactly. You mentioned Shadow Chancellor Melstride calling it fantasy economics. That kind of reflects a fairly widespread skepticism about the assumptions. Are the savings actually achievable?
And what are the main worries if these plans were put into action? What are critics most concerned about?
I think the central concern is about public services. Finding 150 billion in cuts. It would almost certainly mean really deep, probably quite painful reductions in spending on essential services.
Like what sort of services?
Well, potentially things like healthcare, education, social care, defense. It's hard to see how you make cuts of that size without hitting major areas of public spending, which could affect the quality and availability of those services for everyone.
So, what does this all mean for you, the listener, trying to sort through all this? What are the key things you should maybe be thinking about?
I think the crucial things to weigh up are, first, the feasibility. Do you believe those huge spending cuts are actually possible without causing major disruption to the services you value? And second, the trade-offs. Who really stands to gain most from the tax cuts? And what are the potential consequences for things like fairness, economic equality, and the public services we all rely on? Those are the big questions, really.
That's a really clear way to frame it. James Thompson, thank you. That was incredibly insightful, breaking down some really complex proposals. Your expertise from the IFS has been invaluable today.
You're very welcome. Glad I could help.
And thank you for joining us for this deep dive right here on Westferry Times. We really hope this discussion has given you a clearer picture of Reform UK's tax plans and what they might mean.
Yes, understanding the detail behind the headlines is so important for making informed judgments.
Definitely. So maybe here's a final thought to leave you with. When you look at who might benefit most financially, and you consider those big questions about funding and public services, what kind of economic future do these proposals actually point towards? And maybe, what role do you see yourself and your community playing in that future?
That's certainly something worth reflecting on as this debate continues.
Indeed. Until our next deep dive, thanks for watching and goodbye.